Okay, so now it's time to talk about data asset exchange, which is a very important part of the pipeline. It doesn't matter if you have great looking assets and you create awesome work. If you can't get it into a game engine successfully without losing data, then you're going to have a problem. What we're going to do is we're going to start getting all this stuff into the Unity engine, and that's going to be actually pretty simple to do. There's a few caveats, a few little pitfalls here and there, nothing too major, but I want to show you kind of the workflow so you know what to keep an eye out for and avoid those little pitfalls and things that can catch you. All right, so first things first, with the Unity engine, Unity does support the importation of .max scenes. Unity analyzes the max file and exports everything out as FBX. So in the end, you're using the FBX format like with most other software that Unity supports. I'm going to go ahead and jump into Unity now. I have Unity open. I've loaded up the project that comes with this tutorial, so go ahead and do that as well if you haven't done so already. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a scene called Test Scene. It's basically this kind of blank, empty scene. It just has kind of this ground and some lighting in here. This is going to be pretty cool for bringing in our objects and looking at them under different lighting and stuff like that at high quality settings and see what we have. So in this project I have basically my standard assets that come with Unity, and I have a texture maps folder, and I just have some textures and stuff from this little street object you see here. And what I want to do is I want to start importing stuff in. So before I import anything in, I want it to be organized, of course. So I'm going to go to create folder. I'm going to create a new folder, and I'm going to rename this folder meshes. And that's where I'm going to bring in my geometry because it makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to jump back into Max, and in Max I want to export stuff out. Now I'm going to show you two ways of exporting. One is going to be using .max scene file, and the other is going to be using the FBX file format. Okay, so they both have their pros and they both have their cons. So let's have a look at both methods, and then you can decide when you're working which method works best for you under what situation. Okay, so the first method I'll use the simplest, which is just saving a .max file and importing that into Unity. So the way I'm going to do this is actually pretty simple. Let me use this specific scene as a test. I'm going to go and save as. Okay, so here's my scenes folder. I'm going to navigate over to the Unity project folder, and under assets I have this new folder I just created called meshes, so I'm going to save in there. You can give this file whatever name you want, so as long as you save it, that's what's important. I'm going to jump back into Unity. You're going to notice Unity automatically imports that stuff in when you jump back into it. So I'm going to go to meshes, and there it is. There's my file. It retains the name of the actual max scene file. In this case it's 17_temp. It also creates a folder and brings in some materials, but there is a problem. You can see that it failed to import in textures in the normal map that I had in my max scene. It just flat out failed to import that stuff in correctly. But that's no big deal. We could go in there and manually fix that. The mesh is probably the most important thing. It actually imports that perfectly. So the scale factor right now is 0.01. I don't want that. I'm going to set it to 1. I'm going to hit apply to apply the changes. Then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click and drag this guy and drop him into our scene here. And you can see it's a little bit too big. So I'm going to reduce the scale of this a little bit. Maybe make it a little bit bigger than that. Something like that's fine. I'm not going to worry about that too much. If I look at the actual object right here, it actually brought in everything from the scene. So the low-res wall, it even brought in the Omni lights that I had in the scene, which it actually doesn't import correctly. They don't import as lights. They're just empty transforms, so they're pretty much useless. Then we have the rebar over here, and of course these warehouse objects. Remember the broken wall and stuff that we had in that scene. So I brought all that stuff in. The advantage of doing this is that you can import an entire scene. In this case, there's a little bit of a disadvantage, and the fact that it brought in everything I didn't like. For example, I had no control over what I wanted to bring in and what I didn't want to bring in. It automatically imported everything, including these Omni lights, which I really don't need. So I would have to come in here and waste some time deleting this stuff here, losing the prefab, and only keeping what I want. Okay, so it's got some pros and some cons to it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the object that I imported in. I'm going to delete it. I don't feel the need to keep that stuff. I'm going to keep the meshes folder though. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to 3ds Max. So the second method of exporting stuff out of Max into Unity is just using the FBX exporter straight up and skipping that whole .max scene stuff. Okay, so the way I'm going to do this is very simple. I'm just going to select the objects that I want to export. So the rebar over here and the wall itself, and I'm going to go to export, and I'm going to export selected. We want to export to the meshes folder and just give this a name. So I'll call this damaged wall, and that's it. I'm just going to hit save. Now under my options here, I'm going to go with the default Autodesk options. I'm going to use that. Under geometry, I'll use these default settings are good. I'm not going to export any animation, not exporting lights, not exporting cameras, any of that stuff. Embed media, I could turn that on, but if I go to the advanced options, under units, I'll keep it on scale factor of 1, set to automatic. Axis conversion is important. You want to make sure that Y is up, because in Unity, the up direction is Y. In 3ds Max, the up direction is Z. So that's very important. And for the file format, I'm going to go with the latest, and that's pretty much it. Then I'm going to hit OK. It's going to export out. It might give me some warnings. These warnings are no big deal. I'm just going to hit OK and skip that. And I'm going to jump back into Unity. And you can see it automatically imported. So here's the damaged wall. Scale factor is 1 already, which is perfect. And under materials, I have my materials. Unfortunately, even though I checked on the embed media and I set up all my options correctly, it still didn't import in with the normal map and stuff. So no big deal. We'll import that in manually later. Okay. So here's my materials and stuff. Here's my damaged wall. Now I can take the damaged wall, place it in my scene. Might be a little bit too big for this specific scene, so maybe I'll reduce the size a little bit. Place it wherever you want, really, and that should pretty much do it. Okay. For the normal map and stuff, that has to do with textures. I'm going to be importing that later on. Right now, what I want you to do, or if you want to, you can go back to 3ds Max, load up the other scenes of all the other objects we've created in this tutorial, and try using the 2 methods I showed you to import the stuff into Unity. Try it out and see how it works for you. I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera. You've already seen how to do it, so I'm not going to be repetitive about that. I'm just going to get it done, and I'll join up with you in the next video.